Chapter 20. Only a few days away was her and her brother's 20th birthday. Serafina insisted on not inviting Lily. The incident at the hospital that day had finally faded away. Although she and Theodore did not say it, they clearly had different opinions on this issue. After all, he and Lily had celebrated their birthdays together for 18 years. Serafina had a headache. Why did that woman have to run into her life? Today, she went downstairs early, and found that Theodore was already awake, his back straight, sitting upright at the table, eating breakfast. She rubbed her eyes, she was not seeing wrongly, pinched her cheeks, she was not dreaming. She walked down suspiciously, and found her mother standing right in front of the door, looking terrified as if she had seen a ghost, staring at her younger brother's extremely disciplined back, blinking repeatedly. This had never happened before. Was this kid crazy? She sat in front of him, looking at him suspiciously. It's just breakfast, why are you sitting so straight? He was stunned, as if he didn't understand what she was saying. After a while he let his shoulders droop down in a bored manner, relaxing his back. Isn't it because you're the one who caused it? There's a standing posture, there's a sitting posture, even sleeping requires a fixed posture. She laughed, it seemed like she had gained a lot. That being said, you woke up this early, it's also because I am the one who caused it. Nonsense, he glared at her angrily, miserable. At the base, I have to get up every 6 in the morning to jog. I'm still a teenager in my prime, and you sent me away to be ruined, you're so cruel. She rolled her eyes, disdainful. You're still a teenager? You're still in your prime? Where are you mature? Where are you mature? If you were any older, Chloe's moans would have become demonic and pierced other people's ears. Pfft, he almost choked on the fresh milk. I beg you, don't make me spit it out as soon as I swallow it, okay? She reached for the bread, not finding it very appetizing. I heard that a person's habits are formed in 21 days. I think your habit of getting up early and being serious is very good, or... No way. He looked horrified, extremely aggrieved and sad as he looked at her. Discovering that this sentence was useless to her, he immediately poured out his heart and soul to add another sentence. Haven't you ever heard of the story that if a person goes back on his word, he will become a dog in the next life? We made an agreement yesterday, I will obediently go to school, you can't take me to that godforsaken place again. Why is this brat so stubborn with a dog? She acted like it was okay, and sighed, Hayes, I can only do that first. Today, because she was at home, he didn't dare to run out to play, he could only sit in the living room in a daze, frustrated, and watched TV until noon. At that time, the phone on the coffee table rang continuously. She was nesting on the sofa writing an outline of the script, and looked over, saw that it was Thomas calling, and indifferently ordered, don't answer the phone. Once, don't answer the phone. N times, the phone was not answered. His face was wrinkled, his mouth was pressed together, he couldn't sit still. She smiled at him without even looking up, he's not your lover, do you have a thorn in your butt? He was dissatisfied, he is my friend. What right do you have to not let me answer his phone calls? He's a scumbag. She looked up at him, although you're just a scumbag, I don't hope that he makes you worse. He sat at home all day, feeling uncomfortable, and now she wanted to control who he made friends with. He stood up abruptly, grabbed the phone on the coffee table, and went upstairs. She looked at his angry back as he left in a huff, but didn't chase after him. After all, he was home, so nothing could happen. She shook her head and started writing the script. Unexpectedly, half an hour later, Thomas came to the house, along with a few shy boys that she didn't know who they were. Because they were Theodore's friends, the housekeeper let them in. After Thomas entered, he still flattered and greeted her, calling her beautiful sister. She didn't bother to say a word, sat on the sofa, her eyes turned cold, lifted her small foot, slowly rotated her ankle. Thomas shivered, remembering the kick last time, immediately smiled seriously, we'll go find Theodore first. She looked at the group of people upstairs suspiciously, frowned, what the hell was Theodore planning to do? But thinking about it again, a group of boys at home were probably just playing games, she didn't care anymore and continued writing the script. A moment later, Olivia's frightened cry suddenly rang out upstairs, what are you guys doing? She was stunned, put down her laptop, and ran to Theodore's room. She rushed in, feeling the cold air flowing back, almost blinding her. 4 naked men were rolling around in the blanket. The 2 handsome strangers were lying on the couch, clearly performing a gay show. As for Theodore, he was lying on the bed, a thin towel covering his waist, hugging another man, his eyes lazily and provocatively looking at her. He narrowed his eyes, speaking to their mother, but his eyes glanced at Serafina as if he didn't. "Mom, these past few days, Serafina locked me up in the South Mountain base, and I discovered that I have this tendency. She thought she had threatened me, saying that she would call someone to tie me up and drag me there in the future. It was just what I wished for." Olivia had long been frightened by this image, and immediately screamed at Serafina, "What do you want in the end? Not only do you not let Lily into the house, but you also torture your own brother like this. You have to make this house a mess before you can be satisfied, right?" She didn't answer, walked to the bed, her face hardened, and her voice was both heavy and cold. "Whose idea was this mess?" Everyone was silent. Thomas's evasive gaze suddenly flashed. The harmonious relationship that had been built between her and Theodore was already extremely fragile after the incident with Lily at the hospital. Unexpectedly, this scumbag Thomas manipulated Theodore into doing this farce to protest. Now she just wished she could kick this Thomas out into space. Theodore was still very angry, taking all the responsibility. "Whose idea? Wasn't it just a small-scale party? It's just that the person I like now has turned into a boy." "The person you like?" She snorted, curling her lips without any trace of a smile. "Is it him?" Before she could finish speaking, she strode forward, stomping her feet so hard that the bed shook. Thomas screamed miserably, holding his injured knee and falling off the bed, groaning in pain. She looked at him, who was only wearing his underwear and rolling around on the ground. Her face was cold as frost. "Thomas, I warn you." Theodore didn't expect her to attack his friend. He was so angry that his face was red. He jumped off the bed, pointed at her nose, and shouted, "This is my room. He is my friend. What right do you have to control me? What right do you have to hit people? If you like to hit people like that, then hit me here." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. He rushed straight to her, his eyes wide open, and roared, "Beat me to death. This was my idea. I called these people here. It has nothing to do with Thomas. What can you do to me? Beat me to death. Do you think that beating me to death will straighten me out?" Her eyes darkened, and she suddenly threw him onto the bed. The rest of the people were all intimidated by her ferocious aura, and they automatically found clothes to put on. "Let go." He was so easily suppressed by her in front of so many people, feeling extremely humiliated. But recently her mood was not good. Now her anger exploded, using several times more force than usual. "What does it matter if you are homosexual or not? If you want to do it yourself, I will help you." "But..." Her pupils contracted. "Do you believe that I will take all your sperm out to do IVF, find a surrogate mother? As long as the Beaumont family has an heir, I will care whether you live or die. Later on, the Smith group will be my dowry to go to my husband's house. As for you, I will let you live or die on your own." He had never thought that she would say these words, and was so surprised that he forgot to protest. What she meant was, he was useless, just the heir to the family? Not only did she despise him, but she also wanted to take the entire group away? After she finished speaking, she fiercely pushed him away, stood up, and looked at the other teenagers. "If you don't get out of my house quickly, what are you waiting for?" The group of teenagers who had just witnessed a series of her actions, and now hearing these unimaginable words, were all scared out of their wits, and hastily carried Thomas up and ran away. He fell on the bed, his eyes were wild, then he suddenly jumped up, pointed at her and shouted crazily, "Get lost. I don't want to see you, get out of here. Get lost." She glanced at him coldly, turned on her heel and left. She had only taken one step when she heard his harsh laughter. "You're so scary." Her footsteps were stopped. "In your eyes, everyone is evil. You're mean to Lily, rude to your mother, and not very enthusiastic with your cousin Vivian. Think carefully, do you have any friends? Does anyone like you?" Don't you feel that you're scary, pitiful, and sad right now? Why do you have to turn me into the kind of scary person you are? Why do you always like to control my life? Have you ever asked for my opinion? At first he just smiled faintly, but the more he spoke the angrier he became, and finally he couldn't control himself anymore, and his screams echoed in the room. You think I'm scum, my life isn't worth mentioning, but in my eyes, you're not any better. Your life is also a miserable failure. Moreover, he gritted his teeth and gritted his teeth, you know, I hate you very much. After hearing him vent his anger, she froze at the door, looking into space for a long time. Not knowing what she was thinking, in the end, she didn't say a word and left. She silently went downstairs, sat in the living room, hugged the laptop and continued to write the outline, but her mind was blank, unable to type another word. Her hands were shaking slightly, as if she was afraid that what he said was true. 2 days later, he and she had a cold war, not saying a word to each other. She suddenly felt guilty, actually mixed with a little regret. Grandma didn't like to talk and laugh, the only person in the family who could talk to her a few sentences was him. Now even he was angered by her, the atmosphere in the house was no different from an ice cellar. She thought about it seriously, and also felt that her behavior was a bit too much. If Thomas was that scum, she should have started from him instead of ruining Theodore's reputation in front of his friends. But she also didn't understand what was wrong with her at that time that made her so angry. It was as if the things in the hospital, her mother, and Lily's recent affairs had suffocated her, and she needed to vent them quickly. Although she really didn't want to admit it, she was really affected by Lily. She couldn't control her emotions. This was Lily's power? Serafina, you are such a piece of trash. You were like that in your previous life, wanting to teach her a lesson, competing with her, and as soon as you felt threatened, you would go crazy with your family. This mentality killed you. Why are you still like this now? If you continue, you will make the same mistake again. She tried to smile. Half a moment later, she firmly pulled herself together. How could she be defeated so easily? On the night of her 20th birthday party, she would definitely perform at her best. The birthday party was held the night before her birthday, before she didn't even know there was such a way to celebrate her birthday. Before her birthday, she would throw a big party, have fun with her friends, wait until midnight, everyone would count down loudly, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then say in unison, Happy Birthday. Welcoming a new age with the company of friends and relatives, how happy it would be. But just thinking about it, she couldn't help but shiver slightly. This was the first time they met, the first time she publicly introduced herself to the upper class. Tonight, she had to do her best. She opened the dress box on the table, a pink princess dress. After only a glance, she quietly closed the lid. The dress her mother chose was all based on Lily's preferences. She had been in this house for so long, but Olivia had never taken her out for a walk. The wardrobe was still the same, everything inside was Lily's pink clothes. She hated pink. She didn't know who gave her the blue Valentino dress last time. She left the room, just in time to see Theodore also rushing downstairs, hastily shouting, Theodore. He stopped, his expression slightly annoyed. The two of them were still arguing. He only glanced at her briefly then looked away, his tone unhappy. What? She mumbled, I don't like the dress mother chose, I want to buy another one, but, she awkwardly twisted her hand, I don't want to go alone. He was stunned, his cold face gradually softened, but only half a second later, remembering something, his eyes immediately evaded, a bit awkward. Someone asked me to do something, how about, he looked at his watch, 3 hours. Never mind, I'll find someone else. She tried to smile. In 3 hours, the party was about to start. He looked at her with a complicated gaze, hesitated, but then still didn't say anything, and left first. She held her cell phone, thought for a moment. These past few days Emma was busy filming, tonight she had to take advantage of the time to come here. Her classmates didn't have money like her, asking them to go shopping for clothes together was no different from showing off. Thinking back and forth, she could only call Vivian. As a result, Vivian was walking around the streets with Lily, and said very intimately, "How about we go together? Actually Lily's birthday is the same as yours, it's very fateful, you two should be good friends." She hung up the phone, not knowing how long she was in a daze, not knowing what she was thinking. By the time she came back to her senses, she had already dialed Harrison's number. After the waiting bell rang 3 times, no one answered. She was already very uneasy, now she was even more confused. She hung up the phone. But not long after hanging up, he called again, his voice still as indifferent as ever. "What's the matter?" She was instantly nervous. Could it be that she wanted to ask him to go shopping with her? With his cold personality, he would definitely refuse, right? She was speechless, her mind was in a mess. She stuttered, only able to say one word, "Ah." The other person was silent for a second. "What's wrong?" He still spoke very briefly, but this time it seemed to have added a bit of emotion. She closed her eyes. She could only lie and trick him out first and then think about it later.